When buying mascara, Korean women should not be fed a narrative that their eyes look too small. They should be told whether that mascara is actually good and how it works and what that mascara in most cases contains, right? The nature of advertising is providing info, providing customers the knowledge of what products are, what they could do, and how these products could actually benefit them in most cases, right? We from Team Estonia are going to tell you that these advertisements that exist today are really harmful to customers and are just on a principle level unjust, right? In my speech, I'll firstly do characterization, talk about justification, I'll talk about how these ads actually enforce stereotypes, and our second speaker will talk to you how we're going to get also better products on our side in the long term as well, right? So firstly, characterization, right? We see that currently models are posing with and advertising beauty products, models are there posing with them. For example, when you're advertising Coca-Cola, you're going to advertise that on a beach with emotions, right? You're always going to have external factors, like for example, in the Ariana Grande music video, you're always going to use iPhones. In those cases, you can advertise more, right? We say that these advertisements currently sell you only feelings and only emotions, and this is not going to happen on our site. So the mechanism that we are going to stand by in this debate is that you, as a seller, are going to advertise facts, you're going to advertise what your products are going to contain, you're going to actually advertise the products that you sell to your customers, and you're not going to have emotions involved in those cases. So you, as the customer, can make the most beneficial decision for yourself in most cases. Not yet. Now, let's talk about arguments. Firstly, why it's justified to limit these advertisements. We tell you that advertisements right now are all around us. We are constantly being manipulated 24/7 by these aggressive ads, right? This means that people, in most cases, can protect themselves. We let people do decisions when they have the information over those decisions, and then when people are not forced into those decisions or not coerced into those decisions, right? The analogy here is, for example, we all know that smoking is really harmful for us. The only reason that we allow people to smoke is because we have smoking companies can't do advertisements that show that smoking is a beautiful and good thing for yourself. The example here is, for example, that UK bans all smoking ads, and for example, you can't have alcohol ads with humans involved, right? So this shows that in those cases, these things can be actually harmful for you, right? Now, how does these ads influence behavior? We say that firstly, you as an individual currently don't understand the internal information about the products they advertise to you. For example, when you're buying Orbit orange flavored chewing gum, the advertisements show you nice orange trees and beautiful backgrounds. It doesn't actually tell you that there are artificial sweeteners used in those cases, right? Secondly, we say that people can out of advertisements, right? You are constantly shown advertisement everywhere you go, and even unconsciously you don't understand, right? Also, thirdly, you in most cases don't understand that you're seeing advertisement. For example, when you're scrolling social media, you're having product placement, or for example, when you're watching TV shows, you also have aggressive product placement, right? Fourthly, we say that these ads influence your behavior by making fake promises, right? You buying a top shop race trimmer to get a six-pack it is being told that this actually works, and this is going to get you a six-pack, right? We say that these are the reasons how you're actually being right now influenced into buying these products. Sure. The impact of this is that currently people are making illegitimate decisions when they're buying those products, right? The impacts are threefold. Firstly, you're wasting money, right? You were coerced into buying that product because it said things that you actually can't do, or it said things that it basically puts you into emotional bias so you could buy that product. So you're also already coerced into buying that product. Secondly, is also that, like in most cases, the principle of coercion, right? People cannot protect themselves from these ads because they have no power over it. In the cases when the state can come in and show that these ads are not actually good to you and can actually limit these ads because it shows they are harmful for you, then the principle of coercion actually stands. The state should limit these ads because people right now are making illegitimate decisions, right? Thirdly, we say that people are buying worse products for them in most cases, right? The only reason reason I buy a Old Spice deodorant is because I see Terry Crews basically going up with his big biceps, right? I'm actually coerced into buying that because I have emotional biases to Old Spice, even if in most cases it can be worse than other deodorants, right? In those cases, I'm already as well buying basically products that are actually harmful or actually are not as good as they could be, right? So this is why it's actually justified to limit these ads in these cases, right? Second argument. Why these ads currently that we have are enforcing stereotypes and how this is really harmful, right? We say to you that other advertisements are the main way, for example, that beauty standards are enforced. The first reason of that is that ads are literally everywhere, right? You have perfume billboards with skinny women everywhere. You have clothing advertisements with perfect models who wear that size to the basically as best as possible, right? Urban areas overall are designed to basically inherent thousands of billboards and advertising places, right? When, for example, you look for pairing in the WSDC round in Facebook, you are targeted by 3 ads that show beautiful women in beautiful dresses, and this actually courses into, this enforces these stereotypes, right? The impact of this argument is that, firstly, this makes people feel really bad about themselves, right? If you can't identify yourself with that image that you saw in that ad, you're not going to feel good. You're not going to basically have that dress set or like on you as good as it's set on that model, right? In those cases, these things, you can't identify these things and you're going to feel worse. For example, in Thailand, this actually enforces the thing of this actually contributes to Thai women having like a lot of depression because they're never satisfied with their skin tones, right? Because they constantly know that these things make you basically as perfect as possible, but that is not true. In Thailand, these people fell into depression, right? Secondly, we say that there is a creation of societal pressure and expectations, right? When you advertise beautiful tan women basically shaving their legs that don't have hair on them, then everybody expects you not to have hair on your legs. Before I move on, are there any POIs that I can take? Okay, no. Continuing the argument, we say that, for example, in these cases, women in most cases can't have body hair because nobody expects you to have body hair because that was the thing that was advertised to you in most cases. Again, this leads to body issues. For example, again, Thailand, where women are depressed because of these advertisements and all of these beauty standards that are being enforced to the usual individual, right? We say that the comparative here is, under us, you're not going to have shaving ads with skinny, perfect tan women, right? You don't have dress ads, or you're going to have dress ads, for example, against white, basically, backgrounds, or animations on how those dresses work or how they sit on people, right? You're not going to have, basically, like women, your time is out. You don't have women who are pitch perfect and show that this is how you should look under this advertisement, or how you should look basically when you wear these things, right? We tell you that you should be able to buy basically shaving creams without enforcement of body types. You shouldn't feel bad because this is the kind of body type that is actually enforced in those advertisements, right? These are all the reasons what Team Estonia is going to win this debate. Thank you very much.
I would like to thank the first speaker of the proposition and would like to invite the first speaker of the opposition to deliver their speech.
Because we believe that non-technical advertisements is a crucial way in order to make sure that buyers are informed and it improves the market, it's because we are so proud to oppose. First, I'm going to directly address the first and second case of side proposition. And then I'm going to give the first two arguments, which are providing fair grounds for consumers, and the second one about the market conditions. So first, let's go to the first argument of side proposition, which is basically about the illegitimacy when consumers buy. And they gave several reasons, which are because they don't understand advertisements, because they can't protect themselves, and because they are given information. In regards of what they don't or they do not understand, they gave the example of the orange juice and how they do not really know what they are drinking. However, in the case of, for example, food, which is the example that they brought, they are required to include objective information because it is also important that they know what they are consuming. However, since this objective is the most important thing in an advertisement, which I will address directly in my first argument, it's because maybe consumers do not pay much attention to those regulations. However, under their side of the house, what will happen is if you take away the subjective factor, therefore they won't even pay attention to whatever the ingredients are. So, in regards of that they cannot protect themselves, in fact there are laws in order for consumers in order to protect themselves from advertisements. Like, for example, advertisement cannot be placed on the roads because it can cause damages, or you cannot hide advertisement in the media with as pretending that it is a news. So there are certain regulations that the state considers that need to be taken place. So it's not true that there is no protection for the consumers. And they also talk about the fake promises, because they said that sometimes they say that they are selling you something, but they don't really give it to you. However, this is illegal and it's called fraud. And if you say that you are selling something and you are really not giving it, therefore you are committing a crime. So it's not even so. And neither in our side of the house nor in their side of the house, we think that committing crimes through advertisement is okay. So now that I already explained why none of the ways that they say that advertisement is not legitimate, I will move on to the second argument, which is about stereotypes. And they basically sell this idea that stereotypes were created by advertisements because they said they show you images of beautiful women, etc., etc., etc. However, the first thing that they said is that they cause these stereotypes because people cannot hide. However, I've already explained how there are regulations for advertisements. However, we as side opposition do not think that advertisement should be a platform in order to reinforce stereotypes. And what we think is that actually what happens is that since stereotypes existed before, those are things that have to be addressed in another way and not damaging the market that side opposition is proposing. And things such as depression or body issues are not, like they explain, are not supposed to be addressed directly through the market. Rather, that's personal experiences or personal struggles that people should seek help by themselves. So, moving on to my first argument about providing fair conditions for their consumers. First, I'm going to explain how this works, the benefits, and the impact on this side proposition. So, consumers need certain factors in order to make their decisions, such as objective knowledge, which is, for example, how much gas consumes your car. Then you have subjective, which is the most important because it's hinged to your personal experience. And then you have brand recognition, such as the case of Coca-Cola. So what happens when you take away this kind of the advertisement that is non-technical? Then you are removing the subjective part. And that's the most important because consumers buy according to their experience and what they want and their needs. And since it's it's all based on personal experience, it cannot be sold through the objective information. So once you take away the subjective information, since what people mainly care is about these kinds of things because it's hinged on who they are and what they think, therefore they will not pay as much attention to the objective part. So when they don't pay attention to the objective part either, they're only left with the third factor, which is brand recognition. So why will brand recognition stand? Because of the expectations. They know what they're going to get through this brand, and so they will stick to it. Therefore, what you will have is that since the people are only going to decide based on their loyalty, consumers are not going to have all the information needed in order to represent their interests, because markets are about representing the interests of the consumers and the producers. Therefore, since they cannot represent their personal interest that is usually catched by the subjective part, they are not really representing their interest. Therefore, the consumers are being undermined by the market since they can, and it's an unfair ground for them to buy there. But let's move on to the direct impacts on the market conditions. And we're going to here to talk about competition, the effects that this policy will take, and the impact. Let's understand them. Small companies have a really hard time competing against bigger companies because of things such as economy of scale, meaning that bigger companies have more money, therefore they can sell cheaper and more. And you also have brand company, which I've already explained, since people like to stick with what they already know. However, today's small companies overcome this through advertisement. And since they don't even need as much money in order to advertise, because things as social media, it's really cheap, and they can produce very important creative advertisement. Therefore, like for example, when you have organic chips that need to compete against Lay's, and they use social media platforms, and which are a platform for creative advertisement that is again hinged on the subjective part, which is the most important. So with the motion that side proposition is trying to implement, that creative advertisement is no longer possible.
Point.
Yes.
All of this subjective stuff is where our harms come from. Our harms don't come from the fact that we have frauds in advertisements, but the fact that emotions are always tied to the products. You have
Okay, thank you. I already understand. The first thing to explain is that whenever the emotions play against the consumer, it's usually not because of the advertisement itself, rather because of the issue and whatever society has caused, or other side of, for example, psychological issues, body issues, that is not inherent to advertisement. However, what is really important to advertisement is the subjective part in sense of personal experience. For example, how do you sell diapers to a mom? You sell diapers to a mom because of the images of mom with their babies, and not because of the material of the diaper. So, what will be the effect if you take away the creative advertisement? Smaller companies have less means to compete with bigger companies. So, there is going to be less competition because larger companies are going to dominate the market. So there are going to be less incentive to produce good quality in product at low prices, because it's competition, since consumers want quality and cheap prices, what leads in order to larger companies to produce good and cheap. And you also are going to have less innovation, because innovation is a tool for small companies in order to compete with the larger ones. So since what side proposition is bringing, it's going to create more expensive and less quality and less innovation and more failures in the markets, it's because we're so proud to oppose.
Time 8:23. I would like to thank you for speaker of opposition for their speech, and would like to invite the second speaker of the proposition to their speech.
Team opposition simply wants to ignore all of the impacts of advertisements that we bring out in our first speech. We tell you how advertisements is a way of gauging the stereotypes, which although they might already exist, people who are in advertising are always going to want to cater to those stereotypes, make people want to believe those stereotypes, sell that stereotype along with their product, because it's easier to make people buy that product if they think that they can get in some kind of beauty ideal through using that product. They never engage with our material about advertisements having an incentive to make people believe that they can achieve some kind of ideal by using their product, and this is exactly why we win this debate. In this speech, first we're going to do rebuttals concerning the case that we get from side opposition, then moving into rebuilding concerning our case and the one that we present to you, and then finally giving an extension about how we are going to have better products for the customers and how we are going to be able to give a better world for the people who are actually buying products in our societies. But firstly, starting with rebuttal. They give us a first argument about how people rely on subjective information when buying their products and how they need subjective information to even be involved in advertisements, and otherwise they would never get some kind of objective information. Firstly, don't think that people start watching ads or start watching ads because they have some kind of subjective information. People don't start watching an ad about orange juice in order to see how orange juice is orange and how it creates a nice feeling. This is not true. But even if they do, then subjective information is something that's very bad for them. We gave you analysis on why emotions make you buy wrong things, or make you buy things that aren't the best for you, or that are not the thing that you actually prefer. They don't tell you why that's actually true. Why subjective information gives you full knowledge. We don't think that's something that gives actual knowledge to these customers and gives them information to make the best decision for themselves. But also notice that we characterize how advertisements are everywhere around us. When scrolling to see the back tab of the WSDC, you are seeing advertisements in that instance already. And it's not that you go searching for advertisements, but advertisements simply come to you. In the instance where they are not providing objective information, you're never getting that objective information. Under our side, you still see those ads everywhere, simply the information that they provide to you is different.
Sure.
The information that they provide is how does this thing actually work? What impacts does this have on you? How is your life going to change when you use our service or our product? These are much more important things for these people, because then they can actually weigh up whether this service or product is the best one out on the market, whether this is the one that they are most happy once they actually use this thing. This is a benefit they never get under their side, even if people have a sense of seeing subjective information, which we don't really even understand what it means. The second argument is about how new providers can now use social media to advertise some kind of things. It's that this doesn't really prove the motion. They can still go on social media and talk about objective information, talk about the technical details of their products. But furthermore, I think it's much harder for some new startups to compete with the money that other companies have in order to create these narratives, to create these expensive advertisements that have a high level of editing, for example, or making colors seem brighter, or going to a beach in Costa Rica to film their advertisements. These are the things that are inaccessible to these small companies, so thus competition is much likely to happen under our side. Talking about that in my extension as well. So we don't think that seeing Peru has actually given us a case that proves this motion and that makes them compatible in this debate. But now moving on to the point about rebuilding. Firstly, let's talk about justification. First an answer that we get from their side is that they need to include information, which is exactly something that proves our point. They tell you how currently they need to tell that they are using artificial sweeteners, for example, which is something that proves our case, and something that we obviously agree with. They need to provide as much objective information, thus they in principle probably already agree with us. But then they say that customers simply don't pay attention, and thus it's their fault. I think that it's truly their own fault if they don't pay attention to the information that's being given to them. The problem at the moment is that they simply don't get access to that information. They only are given an emotion based on which they are forced to buy this product. They aren't actually given the information that we are protected. When customers now don't pay attention, then now it's their fault. At the moment, they have no version or vision of how they can protect themselves, because these methods or mechanisms simply don't exist for them. Thirdly, they say that you are committing a crime by lying in your advertisements, and thus we aren't actually proposing the motion. Notice that we aren't telling you that these companies are lying. They are simply focusing on emotion, giving you emotions or stories rather than information. So obviously fraud is a bad thing, and we agree with that, but this isn't the case that we have. We are telling you how these companies are using other means rather than information to get people to buy their products, which is legitimate under their side as well, something that we can't take out of this debate by fraud. Lastly, they say that mothers buy something because their baby's in the advertisement. What does this mean? Mothers probably buy diapers based on the fact that how does it make their baby feel? How does it soak up liquid? How does their baby's skin react to it? Things that are much more important to them rather than seeing a baby in that advertisement. They never tell you why that's important for those mothers, why that's the deciding factor for them. Second point to reveal. They tell you that that enforcing harmful stereotypes argument is simply wrong because firstly these harms are not supposed to be there. They aren't doing anything, but these harms are still going to be there. These harms already exist and they need to deal with the actual case that we are providing to you or the actual work that we are currently seeing. Obviously we would like for those harms not to be there, but they are, and that's the reality that we need to deal with. But secondly, they say that these people have to look for help. I think that they obviously should, because this is a false narrative that's being forced onto them, but they shouldn't even be put into that position where they are forced to look for help. These Korean women shouldn't feel like they should have their eyes enlarging through cosmetic surgery because it's a wrong thing and their eyes are perfectly fine. That's the narrative that Team Peru needs to engage with. Before moving on to my own substantive, go.
So, do you think that the only way of dealing with these stereotypes is by passing this specific motion, given that it deals with a very specific set of products?
No, it is not the only thing that we can do, but it's one of the things that we can do, and considering the fact that advertisements are all around you and the influence at every step of your life, then it's something that we should do, and it's a step in the right direction. Prove to us how we are not dealing with at least some part of these stereotypes, and then we can discuss this further. But now moving on to my example and my extension about how we are going to have better products under our side. Two subways handle this. Firstly, notice that we currently have many service and product providers who have predatory business models. We have many telemarketing companies, for example, that focus on making one product very appealing to people in order for people to be lured into buying that product. You, for example, make a great, say, factory map and show how people are losing extreme amounts of weight because of this, while obviously actually using two models. You advertise some kind of kitchen appliances, showing the product as very shiny, or in a lovely kitchen, or being used by gorgeous, perfect families, making you believe that if you want to be like them, or if you want to have a healthy diet or a healthy family, you need to own that same product. These business models are obviously not viable, and they run out at some point in the instance that people understand that their family isn't perfect simply because they have a new oven in their kitchen. But notice that this is not what these providers actually want. They're simply going to create a new product after the previous one runs out and sell this new narrative again to these people. People are inherently forced into buying these things because they don't have any actual information about those products, but only the emotions which drive them to believe that this product is necessary for them. This is, under the comparative, this is not possible anymore. You need to be actually able to prove that these things work, that they are actually effective, and that they actually improve the life of those people. This means that customers under outside are no longer fooled the way that they are underside opposition. Furthermore, we're currently losing out on great products. Current advertising models are very costly, as I've already told you in my speech, which means that some great products cannot market themselves in comparison to the other products that we have on the field at the moment. Smaller services can never find the funds to show their product in this elaborate manner as bigger companies are doing, which means that customers are losing out on other amazing products that can actually improve their life quality. This means that we are selling a false narrative on the customers, forcing them to make the wrong decision, not giving them helpful alternatives that could benefit their life. Team Pro is never giving an analysis on why objective information isn't the most important and how this shouldn't be given fully to people. Team Estonia is very proud to propose that.
Time 2:15. I would like to thank the second speaker of the proposition and would like to invite the second speaker of the opposition to deliver their speech.
Before talking about our third and final argument about how ads help promote products with positive externalities on society, I'm going to go through a couple of points of refutation. So first of all, side proposition says that they really value objective information. This is the core of their case. And they say that it is important for consumers to base their decisions on these types of objective information. This is exactly why we think advertisements are important. And this was our first argument that they seem to not have understood. So let me explain it again. What we were trying to say is that using things such as entertaining or funny or creative ads are a mechanism and a medium through which companies can convey information about their ads to consumers. The comparative is very clear, and our first speaker already explained this. Under our side of the house, you have all of these more like subjective, like fun and engaging things that consumers can pay attention to, whereas under your side of the house, it will basically just be like a bullet list of like what this certain product contains or like the technical specifications of this product. What does this mean? We see that for example, on the back of a juice box or whatever other product, you already have a lot of these technical specifications, but people don't actually read them. Why? Because it's not engaging. Under our side of the house, people receive information about their products because they're combined with this like subjective and more like creative and fun content. So under our side of the house, sure they get an extent of like subjective information, but this is good because it allows them to access and read the objective information as well. Whereas under your side of the house, we see that these people are not actually going to take the time to read this objective technical specifications because it's not engaging, and in the majority of the cases, people won't actually care. If they did care, then they would ignore the subjective information under our side of the house. So the comparative, I think, here is very clear. Second, their point about competition. They said that our side of the house is not realistic in saying that we will have competition because this requires like a large amounts of advertising budgets, to which we say this is absolutely false. Like maybe 50 years ago you needed a really big advertising budget in order to reach a lot of people, but nowadays it's actually, you don't need a huge budget in order to make like a really creative ad that goes viral and gets no. Without this mechanism for companies to allow themselves to like stand out and be different through like creative forms of advertisement, we see that the only thing left will be companies that are already established under your side of the house, and this means that competition will be reduced since it will be that much harder for companies to like, for new emerging companies to stand out and be different. And what does this mean? This means higher prices for consumers, this means less options for consumers, this means lower quality products for consumers. And lastly, they talked about these two very similar points. Firstly, they talked about stereotypes and beauty standards and how ads promote these things and those are harmful, to which we say, yeah, we agree that there are some ads that are harmful, like ads that promote these types of things. However, that is only a justification to ban these specific types of ads that do this specific set of harmful things. Then they also talked about ads that are like misleading or like ads by predatory sellers that promise things that they're not actually planning on delivering. Again, yes, these are ads that are being used in a negative way, but this only justifies banning ads that are being used in that specific scenario. So these two things that they brought about like misleading ads and ads that promote like harmful messages only justify like banning or regulating ads in those specific cases. This is harmful because you cannot like ban ads altogether just because a minority of the time they're being used for harmful things, because that would mean ignoring all of the benefits of ads that come in the majority of cases that my first speaker already presented. Yes?
It is far more easier to advertise facts than stories and fun things. The reason why Microsoft is so effective in selling its product is because they can create expensive ads, and that actually kills their competition in the advertisement. So under our side, more competition.
Okay, the fact that it is easier to like advertise facts than stories is simply false. People don't pay attention to facts. Facts are not what get people hooked. Stories are what actually engages people. We go to the movies to see a story. We read a book to read a story. We don't go to a movies to look at a PowerPoint of a bunch of facts, because that is not what people are like naturally, what people's attention is naturally captivated by. In order to actually for an entrepreneur or a small business to actually grow out their business and stand out, they need to be able to capture people's attention through stories or other like creative and more subjective means, and that is something that can only happen under our side of the house, and that is why we have more competition. Now, moving on to our third argument about promoting products with positive externalities. So, first of all, what are products with positive externalities? Well, these are products that have a positive side effect to those outside the market transaction, which means to those apart from just the buyer and the seller of the product. Like, they have positive benefits that go beyond these two actors. For example, you have like Tesla cars. These, outside of just benefiting the buyer and the seller that make this transaction, they also have positive effects on the environment. You can see this in vaccines. So apart from the buyer and the seller, they also make society as a whole less prone to other illnesses, and this benefits like people outside of the specific transaction. We see this again in education. You do get a benefit from education, but again, the benefits of that also extend to society, and so they actually go just beyond the individual selling it and the individual purchasing it. So, why do these goods need an extra push? So, and the thing is that when people buy something, when they buy a product, they only consider the value that this product is adding to their own lives, and they don't have a way to consider the way that this is benefiting society. So this means that these goods end up being underconsumed below the level that would be optimal to society, because these people are not taking into account those extra benefits. And this means that society ends up being deprived of the benefits of these products since they are being underconsumed. This is something that is called a market failure. So, what is this means that then these goods end up being allocated inefficiently in society. So, how do advertisements actually correct this? Well, the thing is, these advertisements help you understand how these ads are going beyond yourself. So let's take a look at the example of Tesla. So if you are thinking of buying a Tesla car and the advertisement just says this car runs on electricity instead of CO2, that's very not impactful to people. It's just a random fact. But if you have an advertisement that actually tells you the whole story of the polar bears that are dying, the people in third world countries that are suffering because of climate change, and how this car is going to help you change all of that. This is very different, because the polar bears and the people in third world countries are not related to the technical specifications of the car, but they are an overall bigger story that is important for people to understand why they should be choosing these products over others. They're important in order for people to actually buy these products, and therefore they're something that is essential so that society actually gets more of the benefits that come with products that are actually positive for the rest of society. So we see that it is very clear that ads and storytelling and these more creative, non-technical things are something that are essential if we want to make people understand the benefits of these products, and to encourage people to buy things who are going to benefit others beyond themselves. So, because we believe that it increases competition, because we believe that these products actually captivate people's attention and then allow them to receive information and consume the objective information that side proposition so clearly values, and because we see that these products actually encourage people to buy things that have positive externalities for the rest of society, is why we propose.
I would like to thank the second speaker of side opposition for their speech, and would like to invite the third speaker of side opposition for their speech.
Honourable panel, the overall case of opposition is very confusing to me. This is because they don't really acknowledge the fact that all of these providers and companies can still advertise. They can still use advertisements, and they can still show their products in a very beautiful way. For example, Fjallraven can still show their bag as what it is, and still show it beautifully. So we don't really understand where all of their marketing impacts come from. But also, their case is very confusing because to a great extent they actually concede to our case in many points. For example, when they talk about the fact that maybe we shouldn't reinforce gender stereotypes and maybe these ads should be banned, we think that they're not really in line, and we don't really understand why they don't really why they don't agree with our model. We think that overall they haven't really proven much up until this point in the debate. I want to talk about two main things though. Firstly, I want to look at how it might actually affect the overall market, and then secondly, I want to look at how it actually affects people and and overall like societal values, something that has been very responded to much. No, thank you. So how does it affect the market? We were told that they said that adverts are required to include some objective information anyway, but this doesn't really engage with our emotion argument. The fact that even if you have some sort of objective information, then every single product that you show still has some sort of emotion tied to it, and this is something on which they actually sell this product. No, thank you. Something that they also agree to or conceive with their first argument or make it even stronger. But what else is it? They also say would talk about the fact that smaller companies can overcome competition with adverts. And we think that, sure, smaller companies may be able to advertise, but this is also something that happens under our case, and we don't really understand why they can't actually advertise their product to a great extent. We think that they still can. And when they talk about the fact that now you only have some sort of brand recognition, then we think that at the moment richer companies can buy more adverts anyway. Richer companies can buy advert space. This is probably something that Coca-Cola is already doing, which means that rich companies will always have an edge over smaller companies anyway. Brand recognition obviously exists under both worlds. Coca-Cola is already more recognizable than any local brand that might exist. We think that they never prove why under our side smaller companies can't make these adverts. And we think that under us, as we analysed also in our second speech, probably are at a better position, as Coca-Cola has more money to make a glamorous advert, but when they are have face value and they have to talk about only the facts and the details, it is much more likely that the smaller company can actually compete with this larger one. They also gave no response to our extension of that about the fact that when we have telemarketing companies, then these are ones that coerce people into buying products that have little or no effect actually. For example, how Topshop uses adverts to coerce people to quickly sell their products. We think that this is also a huge harm, and they haven't actually responded to our justification. No, thank you. But now, let's move on to the fact that how it might overall affect people, which is we think the more important part of this overall the debate. So what they say is that people their first argument is the fact that people always buy according to the subjective part of an advertisement, and we think that we don't really we think that we don't believe that now people are going to pay attention to adverts. We think that if there is an advertisement in a bus stop or if it's between TV channels, then why wouldn't you see it? Our first speaker characterised adverts as being everywhere in an urban environment, which means you are very likely to actually be seeing it. You can and also in advertisements you can still show Coca-Cola in some sort of positive lighting. You can still show a perfume in some sort of positive lighting, but obviously we're limiting the extent to which you can actually tie emotion to that product. We don't think that means that you can't show it in a way that would actually pull people to actually watch it. We think that now it's just more likely that actual details are going to be given about that product. So the fact that Coca-Cola might talk about how it is made, or how the product might be eco-friendly, for example, this is much more likely to happen under our case. And at the moment there is no relevant information in adverts. We think their world or their characterization of that, the fact that in their adverts you can have emotion so you can get attention and then you can see objective information, is just false. You don't have information in adverts at the moment. When you have a perfume advert, you don't have any sort of information about what that perfume is. Just you see some sort of a smiling woman using it, and you don't get anything from it. Which means that overall, we don't think that they actually proved any sort of mechanism as to why people will look at advertisements more, which means that all of their market harms don't actually stand in this debate. Yes?
One thing is to try to sell a purse that might be somewhat appealing by itself, but another one is to try to sell a solar panel that isn't appealing yet crucial. So you are only addressing some of the things that might be negative and that could be regulated, but damaging the whole market because of some examples that are negative is also detrimental in overall.
Well, I don't really understand this point, because we think that advertisements overall, the ones that we are talking about, obviously have these negative aspects. We think when we talk about solar panels, and these are obviously the ones that already have some sort of technical product details in their advertisements, so we're not even affecting them under our plan. The only advertisements that we're affecting anyway are the bad ones, to which they've already conceded under their bench are ones that we should be banning anyway, which means that they've actually just conceded to our whole case. at all. But now, when we look at the fact that when they say that people always buy according to the subjective part, then this first argument enforces our whole case. When we talked about in our first speech the right of the consumer, that adverts are often misleading, the fact that people are often like scammed out of their money, and that people can't protect themselves, and that subconsciously these companies are affecting these people to buy their products. They enforce this with their first argument. But now, what is the comparative that has actually happened in this debate? We've shown you how people are coerced, and the decision that they make isn't their own, and they're not autonomous in making that decision. But now, then this is the reason why it isn't justified. And now they say that maybe people might buy less product, or maybe companies aren't so effective at advertisements, which might mean that people just buy less products overall. We don't think that they didn't really prove any sort of huge harm. We don't believe that people are now going to buy less products overall, or that even if some people might, this isn't going to lead to any sort of real market problems. And we think that overall, if the only reason people are buying loads and loads of products is just because they are being coerced into it, then this is bad in itself, and we shouldn't have this in our world. But now, when we talk about the fact that the gender stereotypes and the overall problems that we have with that, then they also don't respond. They say that we don't think adverts should reinforce stereotypes. Well, this is not a response to that argument. We analysed why having models in adverts is everywhere in urban environments, and this leads to people internally feeling worse, and the fact that we have social expectations for some sort of specific genders, so that men have to be very masculine, and that women have to be very feminine, have to have, for example, a fair complexion to be the perfect woman. And we think that when they say that we should ban those ads like this, then they obviously agree. Then they concede there is a reason why we shouldn't allow anything in external products. So we see that to a huge proportion they agree to our whole case, and they've actually forfeited a lot of their analysis and a lot of their arguments. So we see that there is no reason why opposition should take this debate, because they have conceded to our case to such a great extent. And for all of these reasons, I'm very proud to propose. Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, we reject the premise that people making decisions based on emotions, experiences, and other non-quantifiable factors is an inherently negative thing. We believe that if people buy trips on the basis of the experience that they could gain from going to that place, they buy toys on the basis of the experiences that they imagine themselves having with these toys, if they buy clothes on the basis of how much these clothes identify with their identity, are these not valid ways through which consumers can gain value from their products? We believe that this is an enormous benefit that has run completely ignored by side proposition, which has only run arguments basing themselves off of some cases and not all cases of what they are attempting to ban. And as such, it is not a proper justification for the type of blanket ban that they want to impose. In order to show you why this is the case, we need to look at 3 points of clash. Firstly, consumer choice. Secondly, product quality. And finally, third-party effects. So let's take a look at consumer choice, because what they've told us is that people only buy emotions and that there's absolutely no objective information being provided. What they've said is that as a result of this, people make bad decisions and don't really take into consideration all of the objective facts. Well, we're telling you, firstly, as I said at the start of this speech, these are not necessarily negative things to be considered, right? But additionally, even if they care about consumers having objective knowledge, which is something that they've stressed a lot, this is actually something that will happen more under our side of the house, because people are going to be far more engaged, as we've said on multiple occasions, with objective knowledge if there's some kind of subjective hook to attract it to them. I mean, all of us remember some kind of informative jingle, I'm sure we all do, but no one remembers the content of the last safety manual you've read. I'm sure that is the case for everyone here. Now, there's another thing that they said, and it's that people are manipulated. This was basically their first argument, no thank you, and that as a result it is justifiable to impose this blanket ban. But again, there are two different scenarios. In one case, well, it's already illegal that people are being manipulated by being blatantly lied to about what the product can do. This is exactly what they brought up in the third argument as well, no thank you, but we'll get to that later. And there's another scenario in which people are receiving valid information as to how they can emotionally interact with these products, which does not fall under the description of what they would be allowing advertisements to do, and they still have yet to justify why in those cases it would be proper to ban this. They need to defend banning both, and what we are saying is that they have not met any kind of argumentative requirement to be able to ban both. Now let's take a look at the second point about product quality, because what is a market other than its products? Now let's look at the third argument that they brought up about predatory models leading to declining quality. And basically what they said again is that there would be manipulation, but what we're saying is that this manipulation only exists in limited cases. It doesn't usually justify this kind of blanket ban. And additionally, there would be little to no effect because again, this is used only in a very specific set of circumstances. We have brought up another argument about how this would lead to an increase in monopoly power. And why is this? Because one effective way through which small businesses in the status quo are capable of effectively competing is by selling their products in a way that will have a lot of emotional appeal. And this can be done in low-cost ways, right? It can be done by coming up with a creative jingle, a creative joke. It can be done by appealing to people in a unique and original way. And we believe that this is something that small companies are far more capable of doing than with competing with the full market force of other larger companies without any kind of appeal that they can rely on. They talked about how small companies can still advertise under their side of the house, but clearly this is not the same type of impact. And we'll explain why after I take your point.
You say that these are really limited cases that we're talking about, but in this argument you say that it's far easier to say, like, be emotional and thus fight this competitiveness all the time. This is clear.
Okay. This is not a contradiction because we're making a distinction between the two things that you've been conflating throughout this entire debate. Yes, it is common for companies to use an emotional appeal in their advertisements, and this is something that we believe is completely legitimate. What we say will only happen under a very narrow set of cases, and effectively does happen only in a very narrow set of cases, is the outright sort of manipulation that you've been conflating this entire situation with. No, thank you. And now we need to look at what I was explaining earlier about their point about small companies still being able to advertise. Clearly, this is not the same level of impact as what would happen under our side of the house. Why? Well, you said it yourself. People feel more appeal towards emotional advertisements, and this is something that can only happen under our side of the house. As a result, you've conceded that this type of edge will only happen under our side of the house, and as a result, the forces of competition that lead to innovation, that lead to lower prices and higher quality, will be maximized under our side of the house and not under yours. Now we need to look at the third point of clash, which is that of third-party effects. Each of us has brought a different type of third-party effects. You discussed stereotypes, and we discussed positive externalities. So you talked about how these types of advertisements necessarily enforce stereotypes. But again, firstly, you've conceded that it isn't necessary to impose this blanket ban on all sorts of advertisements that do not meet this description in order to minimize stereotypes. There are obviously other ways through which we can achieve that. For example, by having affirmative action in advertisement, by passing specific regulation to the sectors where this is prevalent, but obviously this is not something that should apply to the entire economy that we're talking about. Because again, it applies to a very strict set of products, and as appears to be the general theme with their case, it's just one exception. And now, let's look at the third-party effect that we brought forward, which is that of positive externalities. We told you about how, no thank you, as of today, there are many benefits that apply to third parties that will only serve as a compelling means for people to buy those products if these externalities are shown as something positive in a way that has emotional appeal. Because after all, if people are shown that the carbon footprint of their Tesla car is far less than that of a gas guzzler, they're far more likely to buy it if that also comes with the emotional appeal of our planet being destroyed. We believe that this is a completely valid thing to stress in the types of advertisements that we're talking about it. No, thank you. And again, we see that they're only recognizing this impact when it benefits them. They're convoluting the situation, and they're just running a case where all of their arguments, each and every one of their arguments, only applies to cases that would not justify this sort of blanket ban. I'll take your point.
Coercion happens in every single case where there is emotion involved in an advert. Your case is set upon the narrow case, or narrow examples, where sometimes people might be happy with the product that they get, but it is still not justified because they're coerced.
Okay, we completely reject the characterization that persuasion and coercion are the same thing. Why is that? It's as simple as this. If you have a conversation with a friend and that friend emotionally appeals you to do something, then you aren't being forced by that friend to do what he's convincing you to do. If you want to go to Paris because you have really nice memories in Paris, you're not being forced by the French authorities of tourism to travel to Paris. It's an entirely different thing. Coercion is not equal to persuasion. And what we believe is happening in the vast majority of these cases is effectively persuasion. So what are we saying here ultimately? That everything that they have said that allegedly applies to everything that they're attempting to ban here only applies to a very narrow set of cases. In order to demonstrate that this ban would be necessary, they needed to convince us that in the vast majority of cases, if not all of them, then it would be necessary to carry out this ban. But we have already persuasively shown you that this is not the case, which is why side opposition has won this debate. Thank you.
5 and 6. I would like to thank the third speaker of side opposition and would like to invite the reply speaker of side opposition to deliver their speech.
Side proposition's entire case is based on simply banning ads on specific examples and specific cases in which they are being used to promote negative messages. This, in no reasonable manner, justifies banning ads in all or the majority of cases. So this debate has come down to two main clashes. Firstly, which side of the house leads to more informed consumers, and secondly, which side of the house leads to consumers buying and producers selling better products. So, regarding the point of more informed consumers, the side proposition has tried to sell this characterization that these consumers are like drowning with information that is like too emotional and not helpful to them, and like it will end up coercing them because they can't think. This is something that is absolutely not true. First of all, we see that people are not like such irrational actors that they're going to just buy the first thing that appeals to them in this way. But more importantly, we say that yes, there is value in like objective information. That is something that we said since our first argument. However, this like more entertaining forms of communicating information are essential in order to people, for people to pay attention to it. So the comparative, as we already said, is very clear. You have not managed to prove why people would pay attention to this objective information under your side of the house. So presumably, the comparative is that under their side of the house, people will not pay attention to any information, whereas under our side of the house, people will pay attention to the subjective and like the fun information, but also to the objective information, since it will be presented in an engaging manner. Therefore, we believe that it is pretty intuitive that under our side of the house, people are going to pay more attention to all types of information, whereas under proposition side of the house, they will like not be engaged by it and they won't actually take the time to read it through. Then, regarding the clash about the types of products that will happen on both sides of the house. So we brought to you an argument about how competition will increase when little companies are allowed to run advertisements, which you do not need a big budget for. You can just make something really creative that people like it, they start talking about it, and they buy your product. And this also benefits not only the company but the consumers by lowering the price, and competition also increases innovation and encourages products of higher quality. So what did side proposition respond? They said, well, yeah, but these companies can still run ads under our side. So if they think that these ads are going to have the same effect for these little companies under as the ads under our side of the house, then this is a huge contradiction in their case, because either you think that these ads are going to have different effects and lesser effects for the little companies, or you're saying that you're conceding that there will be more competition under our side of the house. Those are two things that we saw in their case that are not able to stand. Then we brought the point about positive externalities and how these types of advertisements allow people to care more about the effects that go beyond them, and how these are an important tool for people to be able to buy products that will benefit the rest of society. And again, side proposition's response was simply, no, people are not going to stop buying these products, and this was a very assertive response, what we saw from their side, because in this argument we provided extensive analysis as to why these stories are essential for people to be able to care. And then their whole case, as I already said before, was based simply on examples of ads that promote stereotypes, ads that are misleading, and ads that promote harmful beauty standards, which again only justifies banning ads in those cases, but it does not justify a blanket ban, which is this motion, which is the burden that they had to prove in order to win this debate. So given the benefits that we already explained extensively regarding competition and regarding positive externalities, we see that given that these benefits exist with ads, they have not been able to explain what ads being used negatively in some cases justifies banning ads altogether, and therefore taking away the benefits that we have outlined under our side of the house. So, because we believe that our side of the house leads to more informed consumers, because we believe under our side of the house it leads to a better market, is why we oppose this motion. Thank you.
Time for 11. I would like to thank the reply speaker of side proposition, and would like to invite the reply speaker of side proposition to give their speech.
Team Peru fails to engage with the crux of our case. We never came out here to show to you that advertisements always engage gender stereotypes, and thus we should make them only include details about their products. We told you how the advertisement systems that currently exist lack information and thus don't give people understanding of why a certain product should be bought. That's the main problem that Team Estonia characterises in this debate, and we tell you that because of this lack of information, this system should be changed, and the way that companies can advertise the products should be different. We have a grave mischaracterization from Team Peru, and that's not the crux of our case. We came here to show to you that we need more information to people in order for them to be able to make legitimate choices that don't have corruption in them. But furthermore, we think that Team Peru agrees with the majority of our case. They say that we should limit the ones that are using extensively use stories and emotions to sell their products. They say that we should ban this. We should limit the ones that are using, for example, gender stereotypes or beauty ideals in their instances. Notice that this is the majority of the advertisements this debate is actually about. The other ones probably only rely on this technical details, which is something that our third speaker pointed out to you. Cars usually are invited to say, how fast can my car go? Or washing machine sellers want to say, how good does this washing machine work? They would not be a problem for them to only have the technical details. Thus we think that even if we create a blanket policy, these sellers would not miss out on anything because they rely on these technical impacts and not on these stories, not on these beauty ideals, because that's not what the thing that actually sells their product. Two clashes in this debate. First, we want to tell you about justification, and secondly about the point of advertisements. Starting with justification. We never get true responses to the principal case we give to you. We tell you how people need information in order to be able to make the choices, and how side opposition never gives this information to these people. The only response we get is that you need to see stories in order to be interested in the first place. Two answers that came out of side opposition. Firstly, we then tell you that you don't. You can still see what this product looks like, see how it's pretty, see how it's effective, all things that happen without a person wearing that dress, for example. You can still have that information under our site, even without having these emotional things connected to these advertisements. But furthermore, even if that case were to be true, then it's worse if people buy products only because of a certain emotion or a certain story that's provided to them, because it's not a legitimate choice for them, as they don't have information as to why they are making that choice. They are not aware of the actual alternatives, they only see stories and emotions, which doesn't make them make the right decision when choosing a certain product. They never engage with the case about principle, we tell you how the people are being coerced into making decisions that might not be the right ones for them. But secondly, the third up tries to give some kind of answers about how you want to go to Paris because you know about how Paris is really nice. These are not true answers. These are not in these instances, you still have that information about the choices that you are making, so these are not analogous, and the third op also fails to engage with our analysis about principle. In these instances, you have information, and that's the criteria that we set for your choice to be legitimate. Finally, about point of advertisements. They say that you need your product being used in order to be able to buy something. We don't think that's true. You can still buy a dress because it looks nice, and you can still purchase a drink because you like the flavour of that drink. You don't need to see a thin white woman wearing that dress in order to buy it. You don't need to see that bottle of that drink on a beach in order to understand that you might like that drink. These are irrelevant things that they are talking about, and never give analysis about why you need this. They say that you need emotions, for example, to buy a Tesla. Tesla can still say how they are being so much more eco-friendly without giving these other things. People are still interested in Teslas because they want to be eco-friendly. These adverts don't need to be paid attention to under their side, and don't think that. And like this is a false assumption that you need to look for adverts. Adverts are all around you, and people still want to buy products, which is why they can't see these adverts. You still need diapers, you still need clothes, which is why you find these adverts, and now they are simply full of objective information rather than stories or emotions, which is a better comparative under this side of the house. Finally, I think they only provide an alternative to this being a blanket policy in the third speech, and don't really engage with this, but also we told you that the blanket policy harms are not extreme, and they should be able to sell their products based on technical things, because people always want those products, and they don't need to be coerced into finding advertisements. Proposed. Thank you.